What if the speed of light was 30 miles an hour?
What if Earth had two suns?
Which cereal mascot would win in a fight?
What if everyone lived underground?
What if it
What
rained
if money
food?
grew on
What
trees?
if pigs could fly?
I don't know if that would actually happen.
It's much easier to store a unicycle than to store a horse.
Hello everybody and welcome to Absurd Hypotheticals, the show where we overthink dumb questions so you don't have to. I'm your host Marcus Lehner, and I'm joined here today by Chris Yee and Ben Storms. Say hi guys.
Hey, I'm Chris.
Hey, I'm Ben.
Guys, although the weather is absolutely abysmal today where we are up in the Northeast, which is pretty much par for the course in all seasons, we're going to be talking a lot about sunshine because our question today is, what if all life used photosynthesis?
Photosynthesis requires water and rain as well, so today is also good for that.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I know plants actually do better on like partly cloudy days than on like full-on blazing sun days or sunny days. Blazing sunny days? Sundays, but not the day of the week Sundays. I don't know if there's any correlation about plants being better off on Sundays than other days of the week.
Maybe.
But yeah, so basically we're going to take all life and the main energy source is going to be photosynthesis. Basically, no more eating. This isn't just like bonus extra photosynthesis energy. This is everything's going to be running primarily on photosynthesis.
It's replacing our eating.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'll be make a little bit more sense too once we start going through it. So Ben, I'm going to let you get us started off.
Sure. So really what I wanted to look at was just, can photosynthesis actually support the energy needs of a human? Is, just by how photosynthesis works and what our body needs, is it even, how much do we have to fudge the numbers basically for that to even work at all?
I hope it works, or else Marcus and I don't have an answer.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out. Or we're going to say, ignore all that as we go forward. Those are our options. That's all we got. So when we talk about the energy needs of a human, we're talking about calories. Technically, what we're talking about is kcals, because I think we've gone through this whole, BS before. There's this annoying distinction between physics calories and food calories, or kcals. In both cases, a calorie is basically a unit of energy. In physics, a calorie is the amount of energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of liquid water by 1 degree Celsius. On food, we have decided to go with kcals, which are 1,000 of those, so the amount of energy needed to raise the temperature of a kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius. Very annoying that we decided that because it makes researching things really complicated sometimes, and you have to be very careful about that, but we carry on.
It's really just annoying that we decided to not say kcals and just say calories instead.
It's mostly that, yeah, because I feel like in Europe they say kcal on labels and things.
Oh, they do. Yeah, the metric system turns out pretty good.
Yeah. So in terms of how much the energy needs of a human, it's a little hazy actually how many calories humans actually need. So the UCLA Center for Human Nutrition says that eating fewer than 1,000 calories per day is the same physiologically as total starvation. So that could technically be like an absolute baseline. In terms of a healthy minimum, what I usually saw was somewhere from 1,200 to 1,600 calories. On average, it's much higher than that. In the US, it's more like 2,500 calories per day for men, 2,000 for women. That's kind of ideally what we can get to using photosynthesis. So photosynthesis, the way it works, right, is, it's obviously more complicated than this, but we're effectively converting the energy from the sun into energy for whatever body is doing photosynthesis. And in that process, we're going to lose energy. I actually found there is a theoretical maximum efficiency of photosynthesis. And I'm not going to lie, I stared at an Encyclopedia Britannica article for like half an hour trying to figure out a simple way to explain it. And listener, I could not do that. I really tried. It's weirdly complicated. Just effectively the unit conversion they're doing. It's related to basically the energy used per quantity of light used in photosynthesis, and also the energy that can be stored per quantity of oxygen produced. There are ratios. It's weird. Our main takeaway here is that the theoretical maximum efficiency of photosynthesis is 26%. So if you have 1,000 calories of solar energy coming in, something is photosynthesizing that is effectively 260 calories for them, right? That's the best you can do, which is obviously very rarely hit for many, many reasons. But we're going to say that our perfectly evolved photosynthetic humans can hit this 26% efficiency because humans are good at things.
we're just really solid at things.
Yeah, we're great at it. And I'm also going to say, because this is something that I struggle with for a little bit, so in those caloric needs for humans, part of that is used for digestion. Our bodies use 10 to 15% of the calories we eat for digestion, which is kind of a weird chicken-egg situation. And obviously, we're not going to be digesting anymore because we're not eating anymore. But there's also going to be some unknowable amount of energy needed for these photosynthetic processes. I'm just going to say they cancel out and that the energy we currently use to digest is what we're going to use for our photosynthesis. That could be wrong in either direction, but I can't figure out what it would actually be, so we're going to go with that.
It's close enough for this podcast.
Exactly.
Anyway.
It's close enough for our purposes. So the first question we have to answer is how much energy there actually is in sunlight. And that's going to vary. It's going to vary based on how much sunlight is hitting that area, and various other factors. But the number I found for just sort of a sunny day, sun is directly overhead, you're going to get roughly 1,120 joules of energy per square meter on a ground level horizontal surface. And that number includes light that's scattered or re-emitted by the atmosphere and surrounding area. That's not exclusive of the sunlight directly coming in from the sun. It includes all that, scattering and whatnot that'll happen in the environment around it. 1 food calorie, 1 kcal, is equal to 4,184 joules. So that means that for every 1 second of sunlight, we are getting, for every 3.7 seconds of sunlight, we are getting 1 calorie of energy. Which means that an hour of direct heavy sunlight is going to give you approximately 973 calories worth of light. Although once we take that through our efficiency, we get down to actually about 253 calories per square meter per hour. Which honestly is more promising than I expected, but we have 2 things we have to answer, right? That's per square meter, and we don't actually know how much sun we can get onto a human. And also, that's only under ideal sun conditions. So let's look at these one at a time. So first question, which I feel like I've had to answer before. How much surface area does a human have?
We've definitely answered that before.
I've definitely had to do this before. I also definitely had to Google how much skin does the average human have? And yes, I'm almost certainly on some kind of watch list now because of that. The answer, conveniently enough, is 22 square feet or 2 square meters. 2 square meters is great because due to how lines work, we can really only point half of our skin towards the sun at a time in a best case scenario. So,
oh, that's how lines work.
All right, children, point your skin towards the sun, please. It's time for breakfast.
So that 2 square meters is actually great because it means that in our idealized pointing as much skin as possible towards the sun at a time, we can get 1 square meter towards it. I also found out, by the way, in the process of learning this, now you have to learn it too, that our skin is roughly 16% of our body mass on average, which means that a 180-pound person has about 30 pounds of skin, which I weirdly hate thinking about. It's just a lot of skin, and I don't like it. I have to live with that now, and so do you. So, just deal with it, I guess.
I don't like the concept that really we are just like a bag of flesh more than we are like a solid, well put together robot of flesh, like we're more flesh bag than like bone robot.
Yeah, we're a 30-pound skin sack with meat inside. Yeah, it's not great. So that's our surface area, and conveniently it happens to track exactly with our other numbers. So that's awesome, great. Let's go away from that idealized sun scenario. So first question I had to answer: will we die if there's a week where it's cloudy? Because that's something that would be a problem, obviously. The answer is probably not. Generally, a person can survive for 1 or 2 months without food. So obviously you wouldn't want to go to, the Arctic where you have 6 months of no sun or whatever. Like, that would be a bad idea. But if there's a cloudy week or 2, it won't be great, but you'll be able to survive it. So given that, how much sun do we actually need annually? On that survival number, if we say it's 1,200 calories per day, that's about 4 hours, 44 minutes of sunlight per day. For those averages of 2,500 calories for men, 2,000 for women, that's either a little under 10 hours for men or a little under 8 hours for women. I looked up the sunniest place in the world, happens to be Yuma, Arizona, according to the World Meteorological Organization. They average 4,015 hours of sunshine per year overall, which is around 11 hours per day, or 2,783 calories, which is obviously more than enough. Even if we cut our efficiency down to half of that theoretical maximum, down to 13%, we still wind up with 1,391 calories, which is a couple hundred above that survival number. So could humans be photosynthetic? It obviously depends on a lot of caveats, but yes? Question mark. If you are in an area that has a reasonably large amount of sun.
Well, I thought, because Marcus mentioned the overcast thing and plants being good in overcast. Does that not, I don't exactly know how that applies.
So basically what I try to do by getting that like hours of sunshine is just cut through that, right? Cut past any daily variance, overcast days, things like that. Just get straight to like how much sunlight are you getting? So my rationale being, okay, if a few days without sun aren't going to kill us, we conceivably will be able to survive those quote unquote dry spells as long as we have enough overall sun throughout the year, right?
Yeah, so it really breaks down to like, and the numbers work out pretty much the same for like, I got similar numbers from like solar panels and things, where of like the 1,000 or you had 1,200 watts per square meter at high noon, you get about, if you do like a daily average, you get about 25% of that.
Yep. Yeah.
If you take in, in fact, get rid of half of it for nighttime and the rest for cloudy days and angles, like that's basically what they use for like those kinds of calculations. So your numbers are about right.
Yeah. It's, not gonna lie, there's some hand waving, but overall, assuming some maybe ambitious efficiency numbers, it is theoretically possible. I'm also really glad that it did work out pretty cleanly because the alternative was figuring out how to redesign humans to be terrifying, large, flat solar panel people. And I didn't want to have to do that. So instead, we can just be normal people who have to also, by the way, be naked because we know our skin exposed.
Okay.
Forgot to bring that up. So, yeah. Embrace the nudist photosynthetic future. Marcus, what did you do?
Well, I mean... my manhood's got a lot of surface area, so I'm really going to need that extra efficiency.
There you go.
Oh,
I asked Marcus, what did you do? But I don't think he heard me.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Because you want to talk about your penis. All right, anyway, continue.
So, I kind of expanded from, rather than doing all...
Oh, you expanded?
Yeah, I expanded, just to get that extra surface area. But no, what I looked at was the animal kingdom. Like, if we're switching the main resource to sunlight as opposed to, eating each other, what does that competition look like? What kind of life is going to kind of evolve out of this?
Right, because we said all life, not just humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're going into the rest of the life. So really, the first rule of the jungle is to make like a tree and be really, really tall. Again, at a base level, the resource you're competing for is sunlight, and the simplest way to get it is to be the tallest. That's why when you have all these rainforests and everything, that's why trees are so freaking tall, so that they can get the sun above all the other plants and compete that way. So really, you're looking for like ideal first stage animals. Like you get a giraffe with a big flat head. Like that's going to be your like base level. This is a good evolutionary step. But that got me thinking about like what happens to small animals now, because if you have this big shady umbrella giraffe, now the shady forest floor is not cool and protected and cozy. It's literally like starvation zone. These smaller animals are just not going to be able to be in a sunny spot for long enough, assuming that there's a bunch of bigger animals taller than them. So will the small animals just starve? Well, no. What they're going to end up doing is they're going to just start climbing the bigger animals. Because even better than being the biggest thing around is climbing on top of the biggest thing around, because now you're just sitting on top of that in the sunny spot. So really, like, because it's kind of tough to be very big and energy efficient with photosynthesis, because as your volume scales up cubically as you get bigger, and your surface area for photosynthesizing only goes up squarely by a power of 2. So as you get bigger, it's harder and harder to have the same ratio of sunlight to energy that you need from it. So small animals are going to have a lot more leeway to spend a bunch of energy moving around and climbing on top of things. So to me, like the ground creatures in the forest or wherever they are, it's going to be a real competition between the small animals aggressively climbing, like the tallest nearby one, and the tall animals desperately trying to shake off the small ones so that their own solar surfaces aren't being covered, which is kind of a special kind of hell if you think about it a little bit too much. So even better than dealing with that whole shit show is just to ignore the whole thing and go flying up above. Birds kind of, I think, really got it going for them in this photosynthesis world because one can be as high as they want, they can just fly, and even if they're not flying, they can kind of perch in positions that other mammals can't reach because, there's a lot of places in the world that you can't get to if you just have stupid little legs. Wings are a big factor. So what I wanted to look at was, if you got a bird continuously gaining energy from the sun, do they ever even need to land? Like, could you have a quote-unquote infinity bird that just takes off and then never, ever lands because it's got everything it needs up in the sky? So the most efficient flyer in the animal kingdom is the wandering albatross, which I'm going to preface and say the albatross is actually incredibly badass. Like, I think I double-checked the numbers on efficiency and things for albatross so many times because I was like, there's no way that this is, like, actually accurate and comparative. But let me run through it real quick. So albatross, for those who don't know, is it kind of looks like a big seagull. It's a seabird. It's big. It has an 11'6" wingspan. It's, I think, the biggest, like, ocean-dwelling bird. They generally spend most of their time over the ocean. Weighs about 16 pounds, 11'6" wingspan. Wings are just 9 inches wide, though. Very skinny wings. And similar to the humans, this actually conveniently equates to about 1 square meter of surface area for those calculations. So again, I get to, like, quote-unquote skip that step because I just multiplied by 1.
I actually just looked up a picture of the albatross right now. It's the first time I've seen an albatross, actually. I didn't know what they looked like before.
I think I just always confuse them with seagulls. They're just big seagulls that are slightly different shapes.
I mean, I guess the only reason I know what an albatross is because of golf.
Oh, that the word even exists?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you got that. I think I know it from the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. They have an albatross in there. I mean, it's dead, but that was a problem. So, basically, albatrosses are crazy efficient flyers. The albatross flies with an energy usage of 4 watts per kilogram. So for every kilogram the bird weighs, it uses 4 watts of energy, which would be 4 joules per second. To kind of put that in perspective, this is less energy they use than when they're sitting on dry land. So, like, they have a bunch of different things that help. One, they use, like, a very specific method of riding, like some birds of prey, like, ride thermals and then, like, use those to gain altitude. The albatross actually has it, like, down to a science where part of the reason it goes, like, over the ocean is that it can, like, read wind patterns. And it goes through, like, a very specific cycle of, like, gaining altitude by flying into headwinds at, like, a diagonal, and then turning into the wind to, like, go to glide and gain distance, which equates to they basically spend no energy. They don't even have to worry about, like, muscle cramps or anything because their joints literally just lock in place in the glide position. So they'll fly, and they can maintain speeds, like, of 80 miles an hour for up to, like, 8 hours as they're traveling. These birds will cover 500 to 600 miles each day that they're traveling over the ocean, which crazy nonsense wild. So going through kind of similar energy usage calcs versus sunlight gathered to maintain their 4 watts per kilogram that they use gliding, for a 16-pound bird, they're going to need 29 watts of energy, which means they need 29 joules of energy every second. So how efficient does it need to be to get that 29 watts out of 1 square meter of surface area that it has? The efficiency it needs is 8.6%, which is pretty freaking feasible. Excuse me.
Feasible.
It's pretty freaking feasible. So as far as, like, energy requirements goes, this bird never needs to land. And then you're like, well, it does need to go get water at some point, right? You can't just be, like, chilling over the ocean forever. Turns out, albatross just drinks salt water and doesn't care. It's got salt glands.
You can drink salt water.
Wow.
Yeah, it just drinks salt water as its main water source. It's not unique in that respect. There's a few ocean birds that do that. But yeah, so it's just, like, has specific glands and metabolic processes to, like, take that excess salt out of the water they drink, and they're really good at getting it, like, out of their systems. So yeah, as far as, like land and air creatures, the albatross basically doesn't even have to do it doesn't have to evolve any further. It just already can do the thing.
Are there other birds that, like, lock their joints and stuff and, like you said other birds drink salt water as well, but is it just the albatross that can do this, or are there other ones?
I'm not sure. I believe there are. I'm not sure how common the joint locking is. I'm pretty sure a lot of a bunch of the migratory birds do it.
I know that I was doing bird research at one point, and there were definitely birds that would, like, sleep while flying in formation or something. Like, not all of them would stay awake not all of them would sleep obviously at the same time, but they were capable of flying while effectively napping, at least, which would require some amount of...
Probably some other birds as well.
Yeah, I did also like when I was trying to figure out how long they actually stay aloft, and it can be for, 8 hours plus. It can be for, like, days, but it's kind of tough to tell because there's a stupid freaking, like, fun fact that goes around where it's like, albatross go for 6 years without touching dry land. but they'll land on the ocean surface. But because that fact is out there as the fun fact about albatross, it's almost impossible to find how long they actually maintain their airspeeds. But I've seen definitely 8 hours plus, so they can keep it going, and they generally land to hunt and drink. So they don't need to land to hunt anymore, so they don't even need to go get that energy. But having our friendly ocean bird rocking it got me thinking about the ocean, because the ocean environment's a bit different than land. The main difference being that in this hypothetical, like getting to the top, like the animals are competing to get high as they can, it's a bit different than the water surface because the top is there. It's the top of the ocean. So all sea life is going to be competing to be the thing floating at the top. There's not really any need to get particularly tall or anything. You can just float there. So even though like sunlight does penetrate into the water fairly deeply, like sunlight penetrates in like a reasonable amount up to like 600 feet. I imagine the surface of the ocean is basically going to be straight animals because everything from any depth needs to be at the top in order to survive. So who's on top? What is the biggest, baddest sea creature that's going to be the best off from an evolutionary standpoint? And I think it's just going to be the jellyfish. Jellyfish, what they got going for them, one, they already have the ability to very easily stay afloat and not have to spend very much energy doing it. They passively protect their territory also from other fish muscling, and like they'll still be able to use their stingers and stuff to kind of keep their zone unoccupied. Another cool fact, actually, jellyfish are also really energy efficient as far as swimming goes. They didn't think they were for a while because so basically when a jellyfish swims, they, close up their big bell and that pushes the water out and that kind of jets them forward a bit. So that was thought to be theoretically not that efficient a process, it'd be generally a bit worse than how fish swim around. But it turns out that motion of pushing the water out, additionally, the water that gets pushed out creates a vortex behind the jellyfish that the surrounding ocean water comes to fill in, and it creates a positive pressure. So even when they're expanding their bell out, they're still getting pushed by a water vortex that just doesn't take them energy to produce. And it seems like a silly little bonus efficiency, but it actually contributes to about 30% of their forward acceleration when they're swimming. So really, they push the water out, but actually, just the motion of the ocean behind them, doubles their ability to go forward, which is pretty awesome. That's just more a fun fact. So really, the jellyfish, what I wanted to look into was how big can a jellyfish get in the ocean? So if it's just going to sit there and float and suck up all the photosynthesis, how good and how big a jellyfish can you get? So before I went deep into the calcs, I decided to give our jellyfish a leg up on the competition via an ability of its cousin, the octopus. So plants actually kind of suck at photosynthesis in general. Ben, you were saying the theoretical max rate is 26%. The average plant, that's just a vine or, a shrub, has about a photosynthesis efficiency of about 0.1%.
Yeah, it's very low.
Yeah, 0.1 to 0.2%. And even ones that are evolved to do well, mostly are crop plants that we've been breeding and, genetically engineering to be more efficient for growing, kind of caps out at 4 to 5% efficient. I think the highest is sugarcane.
Oh, I think maybe the same study. It was about 6.5%, right? Which is a theoretical, based on certain things that we know we can do. We might be at 6.5% on agricultural crops.
Yeah, exactly. So 6.5. I think I saw sugarcane at 8 somewhere. It was the absolute maximum number I saw. And so one of the reasons that plants are bad at photosynthesis is, one, they just evolutionarily they didn't need to produce more energy. They produce enough energy for themselves. You can get things like trees. You don't need to be, you don't need to get more energy to become bigger than a tree, really. But one piece of evidence, funnily, that shows plants are not the most efficient at photosynthesis is the fact that they're green. So plants appearing green means that green light is the type of light reflecting off of them that they're not absorbing to do photosynthesis. Green light actually makes up the largest portion of the light spectrum and therefore would provide the most energy. So theoretically, if a plant was absorbing all the visible spectrum light in a way that was very efficient, all plants would be black. It's not quite to the extreme that they absorb no green light. They actually do a decent job. They absorb about 90% of the green spectrum, but chlorophyll is just not very good. It's less efficient at absorbing it. I kind of went into why because it was kind of an unanswered question for a lot of the articles that were talking about it. But they did one study where it turns out that green light is the most energetic and it makes it tough for the chlorophyll to process because when you have it, it excites the process almost too fast for the rest of the photosynthesis process to keep up. And when you have fluctuations, it goes from 0 to 100 too often to be consistent. So they like having the blue and the red wavelengths are a bit more consistent for the biological systems. Basically, summary, the disadvantage, the one disadvantage that plants have is that they can only absorb light based on the color of their leaves and what wavelength those leaves block and allow in as far as light goes. And they've picked for them a practical color. If you look at an octopus, though, an octopus can change its skin colors however it wants. It doesn't have to just stick with being green. Octopus's skin is pretty crazy. It's actually comprised of several layers. The outer layer, there's a clear / pigmented layer where they have a bunch of cells containing different colored pigments, and the way they change colors is by those individual cells expanding or contracting. So you can imagine a really tiny red dot expanding, surrounded by a little bit of clear, expanding into a big red dot and compressing the clear around it in order to make it appear more red. And then in addition to that, they have another layer too below that where they have pigments that are more reflective. So they can use these reflective cells to brighten up and capture, brighter colors to better match. And then below the reflective layer, there's another layer of quote unquote rough skin that's used to disperse and scatter light to not show up. So between the different types of cells it has, the octopus has the tools to do whatever the heck it wants with light. It can change, it can allow different wavelengths in, it can reflect it if that's more efficient, it can scatter it if it wants to get rid of something, it can do whatever the hell it wants. And once it has a motive to do that to maximize photosynthesis, I think it's going to be able to naturally work on doing that by, basically make itself the best color for the light that's coming into it. And that'll even impact if the sun's setting, how the sky changes color from, blue to sunset colors. And basically that's showing the angle of light being that's the most common is basically what makes the sky the color it is. So you'll get better efficiencies with different colors throughout the day. So that's all a big rigmarole of just saying octopuses are cool. And when I talk about how big jellyfish are going to get, I'm setting the efficiency to 20% out of this 26%. Saying that, hey, one, it can manipulate its colors. Two, you can have multiple layers of photosynthetic skin if you want. It could be a multi-layer photosynthesis capture. You could have the outer layer capture blue, and then the next one I set up for red. You can do whatever you want because you got clear jelly skin. So to get an idea of the energy requirements for a jellyfish, it was tough to find. Again, this is one of those ones where the research got hammered by the fun fact of the extra energy efficiency of jellyfish swimming, basically overrode every search result for how much energy they just use day to day, how much fish does a jellyfish eat to maintain its day-to-day operations. So under the hope that they would end up being big, I just switched to use a blue whale as a touch point for mass versus energy requirements. So a 107-ton blue whale consumes 65 kilowatts of energy. That's what I use for I scaled from there as my energy comparison point. And then how much does our jellyfish weigh? The lion's mane jellyfish has about a 6-foot diameter bell and weighs about 200 pounds. Lion's mane jellyfish is one of the big jellies. So putting all those comparison numbers in and then running the surface area kind of just as a hollow sphere of a radius to collect my sunlight, the turn point where you no longer absorb enough sunlight to survive is at about 5 meters. So basically 15-foot, and this is radius, so 30-foot diameter color-shifting jellyfish are going to basically just be covering our whole ocean. And when the sun sets, they're all going to change color, and it's going to be both rad and squishy.
I like both rad and squishy.
There you have it, Chris. What did you take a look at?
So when I looked at photosynthesis, I wanted to look at the byproducts of photosynthesis and more the chemical process, basically, because it is a chemical process that turns carbon dioxide, water, and light energy into sugars and oxygen. And then, as Ben and Marcus have said, it uses that sugar as food. But what it does with the oxygen in the excess water is it releases it into the atmosphere, which we as people breathe, which is important. So, yeah, normally animals, we don't go through photosynthesis. We go through what's called cellular respiration, which is basically breathing. It's basically the opposite of photosynthesis, where we turn oxygen and sugars into carbon dioxide, water, and energy. and then we release the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere instead of oxygen. So these two processes basically just balance each other out. There's a constant cycle of carbon dioxide and oxygen throughout the atmosphere. And there has been recent concerns about like an imbalance because human activity and like burning fossil fuels and all that has kind of resulted in a rise in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But if everything uses photosynthesis, my thought was that we would have the opposite problem. So the balance would be off in the other direction. We'd have too much oxygen, not enough carbon dioxide. If this is true, photosynthesis requires carbon dioxide. So if we run out of carbon dioxide, that's not good. Everything dies then. So how bad is the problem actually is what I want to look into. So I started with how much CO2 people just breathe out normally. The average human breathes out about 2.3 pounds of CO2 every day. It depends on your activity level, but that was sort of just like an average for like an average activity level.
Hashtag, what's my carbon footprint? 2 pounds.
And that means that globally, humans breathe out about 3.3 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year. But that's just humans. We're saying that all animals also go through photosynthesis, so this would affect them as well. Humans only make up 3% of the biomass of all animals, so we'd have to scale up that number. If we scale it up based on the biomass, then all animals collectively breathe out about 110 billion tons of carbon dioxide each year. Now, my original thought was that we would lose all of this because we're no longer breathing, but that's not actually true. I learned a couple days ago, it's probably something that I should have known a long time ago, or I feel like I should have learned it like as a kid, is that plants actually do breathe. So my understanding of photosynthesis originally was like, it was pretty simple. Like people breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants breathe in carbon dioxide, breathe out oxygen. And then it was just like, they're the opposite and it's that cycle. But it turns out that photosynthesis isn't actually like a replacement for breathing. Plants do breathe, and obviously they don't have lungs, so they don't breathe like us, but they do technically go through respiration. So what happens is the photosynthesis, it produces sugar and oxygen. That oxygen is released into the atmosphere, but then it reabsorbs some of that oxygen and uses that oxygen to break down the sugar and convert that into energy. So the photosynthesis itself doesn't create energy, it's the breaking down afterwards. And that breathing also produces carbon dioxide and water. So plants do emit carbon dioxide, it's just they also emit oxygen, and it sort of outweighs it. So that means that animals, even though we are going through photosynthesis, we do still breathe. So our source of CO2 is not an issue. It's not going to go away. So that's a good thing. And there are a few other sources of CO2 as well. I'll go into that later. But first, I want to look at the oxygen side of things. So our source of CO2 isn't a problem, but having too much oxygen could still be a problem.
Oh, oxygen's strictly good, right? You just more oxygen is better.
Yeah. Because now we basically have, like, we're just adding more things that produce oxygen. High levels of oxygen in the atmosphere could make things like, it makes fires more likely because it's, I don't think it's flammable, but it I actually don't know. It's not flammable, right?
No, actually, air with enough oxygen in it is flammable. I remember there was in my high school chemistry class, they were doing they captured oh hey, this beaker should have captured a whole bunch of CO2 from this reaction. This beaker should be kind of more full of oxygen from this reaction. So it was here, watch this match, and they're yeah, watch this match go out when I put it in the CO2. Only they had mixed up the beakers. Luckily, it wasn't a very big beaker, but they put the match over on the oxygen side, and it made a pretty big flame for a second before they're whoops, not that one.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it needed another fuel source or not or something, and the oxygen just accelerated it or that way. I didn't know if oxygen was flammable itself though, but I think it might be.
I believe it is.
Yeah, oxygen. Quick Google says oxygen is not flammable, but it causes other materials that burn to ignite more easily and burn far more rapidly.
Yeah. Either way, it's a problem because we don't want Earth to be a giant fireball. The second thing, or the second outcome of having extra oxygen in the atmosphere is very big bugs. Apparently, So insects and other bugs, they breathe in through tiny tubes called trachea. And the atmosphere currently has 20% oxygen in the atmosphere. Back in the prehistoric times, like around 300 million years ago or something, the air had 30% oxygen instead of 20%. And during that time, bugs were very big. There were dragonflies that were like hawk size, and there were spiders that were like smaller bird size. I don't want that. So I want to see how much is this oxygen going to be an issue? Are we going to get those like big bugs and stuff? So I looked at how much plants produce oxygen first, because that's what we have data on. So land and ocean plants combined release 330 billion tons of oxygen per year. And if you scale that up, or if you like add on what the animals would add to that, just based on the ratio of biomass for animals. So animals their biomass is 0.4% of what plants are. So we'd only add 1.5 billion tons to that. 1.5 billion sounds like a lot, but compared to 330 billion is really not that much. And normally this oxygen gets converted into other things. So it doesn't just like stay in the atmosphere. So 77% of that oxygen, it gets converted through aerobic respiration, so breathing. 17% gets converted through something called microbial oxidation. And then 4% gets converted through combustion of fossil fuels. So all those chemical reactions reduce the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere and keep a good balance. Now, the aerobic respiration still happens because, as I established, we still breathe. So that's good. That's still happens. The microbial oxidation is when microorganisms, they oxidize inorganic compounds for energy. So they're like breaking down non-organic things to fuel themselves. I consider that sort of a form of eating. I don't necessarily know, but in my interpretation of this would be replaced by photosynthesis. So this wouldn't happen anymore.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines. I was thinking about doing the poop problem, because if something dies, there's no longer anything to go and decompose it, and it's going to be... But it got a bit gross, and I decided maybe one day, maybe for one time, I won't do the poop problem.
Would we have we're not eating anymore. Would we poop?
I guess it wouldn't be poop, it would just be corpses.
Yeah, it's a corpse problem. So that 17% that we of the oxygen that we convert through that wouldn't happen anymore. So we'd have basically an extra 17% of oxygen in the atmosphere. So that totals to 57.6 billion tons of extra oxygen that we don't normally have. That doesn't actually make too big of a difference because, like, if you look at the biomass, it sort of makes sense. Plants make up 83% of all biomass on Earth. Animals only make up 0.36%. And then microorganisms make up 14%. So comparatively to the plants, like, the animals and microorganisms are nothing.
Saved by our own insignificance.
Yeah. I do think that 17% increase in oxygen will still result in, like, big bugs, which isn't great.
Yeah, because oxygen's what, 17% of the atmosphere? 13%?
It's 20, I think it was like 20%.
So it goes up to like 25 then? Or
yeah, something like that.
Roughly something like that.
Somewhere around there, yeah. But I don't think it like kills us or anything. But if we do want to try to avoid this big bug world, then we can try to control it. We can't control the oxidation thing. That's just what it is. It is what it is. We can control the combustion thing, though. So I listed 4% of oxygen is converted through combustion of fossil fuels. So to maintain a balance, we need to increase that from 4% to 21%. So we basically just make up the difference by burning things, which is easier because there's a lot of oxygen.
And also a lot of incentive to burn very big bugs.
Yeah, exactly. So uncontrolled fires are bad, especially in a high oxygen environment. But if we do like controlled fires, we can burn off oxygen, we can produce more CO2 for our photosynthesis and maintain a balance. And I was looking at things we can burn. You mentioned the decomposition thing. Things aren't going to be decomposing anymore, so we can burn dead bodies like animals, and we can cremate our dead. We can also burn more fossil fuels to save the environment. We can burn more trees to save the environment, because I guess trees are kind of not good for the environment anymore, sort of, because they're just contributing to the problem now.
Yeah, I'll say this too. One other thing is that, you know, if we have all these animals competing for being in the sunlight, they're just going to climb the trees. Trees are not going to be well off
Yeah, probably. Because they can't move and shake things off. But, yeah, basically we're just gonna have giant bonfires. I don't know, maybe we'll have, like, celebrations every couple times a year or something, just to burn a bunch of things and save the environment.
I like it. I like anything where we light everything on fire at the end of it.
Controlled. We don't want the entire world to burn, but we want to control the burns.
We didn't start the fire. Well, actually, we did. It was important. We saved the planet. All right, and with that, we can move over to our Would You Rather question.
Marcus, are you ready for Would You Rather?
I am ready.
Would you rather never be tired but need to sleep 15 hours a day, or always be tired but only have to sleep 4 hours a day?
Wait, you can.
All right, so do I want to sleep 15 hours a day or continue my current
Yeah, I was gonna say you
plan?
can. You can probably have both of these options available to you right now.
Actually, I had the experience this morning where I woke up it's a weekend day today, so I woke up early and I'm like, damn it. It's like when you wake up and I'm like, I'm still tired and want to sleep more, but I know based on where my body's right now, it's never going to fall back asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like my internal clock is like a more than 24-hour clock. Because I get tired. It takes me longer than 24 hours to get tired. So like if I went like completely on my internal clock, then I would just get screwed up with the days.
I will say, I think I'm really getting into my early stages of adulthood here where the body stops being so springy and joyful. I'm really interested in the never be tired because I feel like I get more done in like my one good hour of productivity than I do like the rest of the day combined. So if I could get like 7 non-tired productive hours each day, like that's so good.
The other problem you're going to have with your 9 productive hours is that you do still have to work.
Yeah.
Which is going to take up most of those 9 hours.
You're not going to have a lot of time.
But I imagine if I'm that energetic for 9 hours, I feel like I would just be doing such good things. Like I would carve out like a job for myself through my continuous motivation to like not work 40 hours a week.
You would be at peak productivity.
Yeah, I feel like I could do like a lot of jobs in like 4 hours and like still have it count as an 8-hour day. I'd have to find something specific that works for my situation, but again, motivated, gonna find it. I'm considering this a magic power. Like, I have really high confidence in what I could accomplish if I just felt like energetic and motivated all the time. And then the flip of the coin is a more normal life. Like 4 hours, yeah, sleeping 4 hours
isn't a lot though.
4 hours is not a lot of sleep.
But I mean, I guess we're saying that in order to be healthy, you only need 4 hours, but you'll just be generally tired. And there's nothing you can do about the tiredness. It's not like if you sleep more, then you won't be tired.
Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly. It is annoying socially to only be up 7 hours.
Yeah.
9 hours.
9 hours, sorry. Still 9 hours, like because it's 9 to 6 is kind of your go is your jam. 10 to 7, I'd say 10 to 7 probably.
I mean, I guess those are kind of normal like hours to do things.
They're not allowed to do things. They're not like. It sucks to be like to like leave everything you're doing at like 7. You're always the person who has to go home. It's like having kids. You always gotta go home early because it's like gotta go to bed.
Yeah, you basically don't have a personal life during the week. Only on the weekends you can have like do things fun with friends and stuff.
Yeah, because even if you can work out to where you're only working like 4 hours a day or whatever, your friends aren't going to be doing that. So you get like an hour and a half of socializing before you gotta head home and go to sleep.
I do like binging shows too. Would have to give that up. You got no time for shows.
No time for shows.
I'm trying to decide if I'd be more like which one I'd be more productive per day in.
Oh, for me, it's the 9 hours, no question. For me, it's not even particularly close. But that's just my own interpretation of my productivity.
You get a lot more time though. Like it's less productive per hour.
You have over twice as much time.
Yeah. So it'll take you longer to do things, but you have a lot more time.
Like, even if it takes you 12 hours to do what would have taken you 4 hours to do on your, like, super sleep life, you still only have 5 hours of free time in super sleep versus 8 in tired man. I don't know. I need better names for these situations.
Super sleep and tired
Super
man.
sleep and tired man. I don't know. 9 hours is just not that much time.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the productivity, I think I would lean towards 4 hours of sleep. But in terms of, like, feeling good, I would lean towards the other way.
I feel like, assuming I have to support myself, right? Assuming I have to work for money to live, I don't think the 9-hour days is going to work very well.
It just sucks to be tired all the time. Like, being tired is not a good feeling.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. This is one of those ones where I'm gonna answer I want to be awake and excited, because that's I feel like my life would be like there's higher upside. Like my life could be more excited. I'm gonna go down a path, like if I'm just like going that hard all the time. But if you really made me like put a gun to my head in real life, made me choose, I'd probably end up picking the 4 hours of sleep.
You'd be tired, man.
The tired man. Stick with what you know. So if we're keeping count, I'm picking. Shoot, what do we call it?
Tired man,
Super sleep.
Super sleep. Yeah, I'm picking super sleep.
Which one is the main hero and which one's the sidekick?
I think Tired Man is the main character, and Super Sleep is the annoying foil to him, who like shows up and
so
like
they're adversarial.
Yeah.
They're not like sidekick and
No.
They're against each other.
Yeah.
Super sleep comes in at the end of the episode to fix all the problems Tired Man has caused.
I am far more of a realist than Marcus is. I am tired, man. There's just no I'm tired, man.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna choose Tired Man as well. It's just the extra time, even if it's not super efficient. I like kind of just chilling and doing nothing and being tired and like watching a show. That's fun.
Yeah, no, I enjoy that. So, but I'm gonna still stick with super sleep. It feels right if I was gonna get a real choice. But anyway, that's our would you rather. If you, and we all know we are, if you are also tired man or tired woman or tired person, it means you are in the perfect mental space to listen to our podcast. But if you got 20 whole hours to fill up, sometimes there's not enough podcast for you to listen to. We have a solution. For just $1, you can go onto our Patreon, www.patreon.com/absurdhypotheticals, and become a patron. Then when you're one of our good Absurd Hypotheticals pals, you get access to our bonus content that we release each month exclusively for our patrons. We do one episode each month, and when you sign up, you get access to all of them that we've ever done. God, there's got to be 50 of the frickin' things by now, at least.
I don't think so.
No, I think we're close to that.
Yeah, maybe, I guess. They're not all called the same thing.
Yeah, they used to be behind the scenes about making the show, and then we realized there's only so much to talk about making a podcast, so we've got them to more casual chats, fireside chats we call them now. But it's all good stuff. If you are, if you're super sleep, and you're listening to this, and your mind is racing, and you're like, wow, they really should have done something like this, or, oh, they're doing this question, but you know what would also be cool? What if this happened? That means you have a cool question idea. Send it to us. Best way, probably by email, absurdhypotheticals@gmail.com, easy to remember. Or if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can just put it right in the comments below. I'm pointing to them, but again, this is an audio format, so you can't see, even though you're on the YouTube, so that's a shame. But yeah, those are two best ways to get your questions, and we are more than happy to turn your question into a full-on episode that'll be immortalized forever on this podcast, and you can have each of us spend, respectively, hours researching the idea that you put into our brains. And if all the stuff we're talking about is things that you like, including the whole episode you just listened to, let us know. Leave us a review on your podcast player, Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, wherever you're listening to this. There's always a spot for putting reviews. Leaving a review helps the show in a very free way. It doesn't cost you a dime, just a little bit of time. And the more reviews we have, the more the show pops up on search results, the more people who find the show are willing to give it a listen if they see some good reviews along with it. So it really helps the show grow organically. So yeah, you can let everyone know how much you love the show right there in all those different review spots. But in any case, that is it for today's episode. You can join us next week where we answer the following question. Which Disney princess would have the best crime spree?